Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see you all here this morning. If you don't know who I am, there's a few new faces in the house this morning. My name is Don, and along with my lovely wife, Abby, we have the honour of leading this wonderful church family. So we are in Advent. We're in the run-up to Christmas. I can't quite believe we're in December. Time's absolutely flown by. But Advent is meant to be a season of preparation. And I don't know about you guys, but I assume we all have different rituals in the run-up to Christmas. So Michael Bublé came on for the first time in our house yesterday. Ruth, you're rolling your eyes. Does anyone listen to Michael Bublé at any other point in the year other than Christmas? No, I didn't think so. Well, it got us in the mood as we put our tree up. Maybe you start watching Christmas films. Why don't you shout out your favourite Christmas film or one you like to watch? Home Alone, that's a classic. Any others? Scrooge, The Grinch, brilliant. Oliver Twist, fantastic. What about, there's Elf. Arthur Christmas, we watched for the first time last year, which is great. Maybe Love Actually, if you're into your mushy or romantic films. No. Maybe you have an advent calendar and you're slowly opening the doors, or maybe you don't have the patience. What I used to do when I was younger is I'd wait for a week, I wouldn't open any, just so I could open 7 in a row and eat all the chocolates. Or maybe you have a long list of people you send out Christmas cards to. These are all rituals we have in preparing for Christmas. And I grew up in an Anglican church, and I was used to there being candles at the front, and each Sunday of Advent we'd light a candle as a visual reminder of us drawing closer to Christmas. These things, done well, are meant to prepare us to celebrate the life-changing reality of Jesus coming here to his creation in the flesh, becoming God with us, Emmanuel. And today, just for a few minutes, Mars said we're going to finish early, so no pressure on me to actually keep this short. I shall try to. But just for a few minutes, we're going to be considering how we can prepare ourselves in this season of Advent. And we're going to be reading from Isaiah, some words which were spoken hundreds of years before the birth of Jesus. God was preparing the hearts of his people for what was to come. The Israelites were a family that had turned into a nation that God had chosen to in turn pour out his blessings on the entire world. And before we get to this chapter, so we're in Isaiah chapter 40 this morning, Isaiah had just delivered some pretty terrible news to God's people about them being taken away into exile in Babylon. They spent 400 years in Egypt in a metaphorical wilderness, then 40 years in a literal wilderness, and now they're about to go back into a season of being in the wilderness. But that's not the end of the story. So let's read from Isaiah chapter 40, verses 1 to 5. If you don't have a Bible at home, you're very, very welcome to take one from the welcome table, free of charge, as our gift to you. Feel free to grab one of those, and also they should be coming up on screen. Colin is on it. Thank you so much, Colin. So Isaiah chapter 40. Comfort my people, says our God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, that she has received from the Lord's hand double all her sins. A voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain, and the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. These words are pointing to Jesus, the Messiah, and what he would do. And in Matthew chapter 3, John the Baptist appears on the scene, and he was that voice in the wilderness preparing the way for Jesus. John was a pretty crazy figure, wearing clothes of camel hair, eating locusts and honey. Now, I don't think God's calling any of us to be like that today. I don't know, not me anyway, I hope not. But what can we do to be preparing for Jesus this Advent? And I'm going to just briefly highlight 3 really practical things that we can be doing in the midst of everyday life to prepare ourselves in this season. And the first is stop. So the older I get, the more I appreciate seasons in life. Both the actual seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter, but also seasons in terms of what we go through. And when I was younger, I don't think I had a grasp or a concept really of what a season was. I guess in youth, you just go from one thing to the next. Life kind of hits you. You're just in the moment. I remember at school, I played lots of different sports. I was in different sports teams. And then the summer holidays would just hit. And then, you'd just be in the summer holidays. And things would just happen. And I guess as you grow up, or as I've grown up, I've come to appreciate different seasons in life. And how I don't want to just go from one season to the next, stumbling from one thing to the next, just life happening. But I want to be really intentional in stopping and asking myself the question, firstly, what season am I in at the moment? Am I just stressed out of my mind, overwhelmed, unsure of what to do in life? Do I have a real season of peace where actually I feel really grounded and things are kind of falling into place? Like, what season am I in? And as a church, we're in this season of Advent, this season of preparation. And stopping is one of the biggest blessings we can do for ourselves in this season. Often the busyness of this season can work against this opportunity to stop. And I'd recommend that in the busyness of life, you might be at work, you might just have a moment free, even in the busyness of your day, just to stop. You might even want to just shut your eyes in that moment and just stop. It doesn't have to be for 10, 20, 30 minutes. You don't need to get up at 5 a.m. and have hours of prayer to stop, although, of course, that would be amazing if we all did that. But at any point, we can just stop and bring ourselves before God and just recognize where we're in to prevent us just going from one thing to the next. Many of us have been through a season of wilderness recently, asking God, why has certain things happened? Maybe you've lost a family member. Maybe things in life haven't quite worked out as you had hoped. Maybe you're trying to get your head around the pandemic. What on earth has happened these last 2 years? Maybe it's felt like a wilderness. But let me encourage you that this word in Isaiah was to people in the wilderness. And it's the same for us today, that God wants to prepare us wherever we're at, and especially if we're in the wilderness, to be ready to meet with him. In the wilderness, he makes a way. So secondly, breathe. Sounds obvious, but breathe. I've started cycling recently. I've picked up cycling again. I'm cycling a few times a week. And I'll come down the hill from our house in Greenock. I'll go past the Battery Park. I'll go up Newark Street. And even by that point, there's a wee hill, and I'm out of breath, and I'm cycling away. And there's been several times a car has shot past me, and I've literally got a mouth full of exhaust fumes from the car, and I'm trying to keep active. It's slightly ironic that I'm breathing in all these fumes. But it's not a nice thing to breathe that in. And we can ask ourselves the question, what are we breathing in at the moment? What are we breathing in? Are we overcome by anxiety and stress and worry in this time? What is filling our lungs? What is filling our airways? In Psalm 23, in the Message version, it says, "True to your word, you let me catch my breath and send me in the right direction." You let me catch my breath and send me in the right direction. And I think this is a really helpful image as we stop in this season and as we catch our breath to hear God's voice, to send us in the right direction. Maybe as you stop and as you catch your breath, you'll get a sense of God's heart for you this season. How much he loves you, that he is God with you. And in verse 2 of this passage in Isaiah 40, there's a promise to God's people that they will receive double for all their sins. What an amazing picture of God's generosity. And if you look at the original text, the word for double means to fold over. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Pizza Express or another restaurant where often the chefs are visible. You can see them preparing the pizzas, preparing the dough. And I don't know if you've ever seen it where you've been at the restaurant and they've been stretching out the dough and it looks like it's just about to tear apart, and then they'll suddenly fold it back over and then they'll be able to stretch it even further. That kind of captures a little bit of the picture of what Isaiah is trying to say there. That where we feel utterly stretched and almost torn apart, maybe we felt far from God, maybe we have been disobedient to him, maybe we've strayed from him, and we feel that stretch and that distance. God's heart is not to keep that distance, but is to fold it over and to give us double than we could have ever expected from him. Absolute grace and generosity. And that's our heart for this big wrap that we're doing. And some might think, is this just feeding into, consumer Christmas and more gifts and all of that sort of thing? And the truth is, maybe it is, but really the heart of it is that if we can get a gift in the hands of 43 children who've experienced some kind of domestic abuse, and then 20 women who've experienced that as well, and they just get a small sense of God's love for them through that gift, it is completely worth it. It is so, so worth it. It's God's generous heart. He wants us to stop. He wants us to breathe so we can catch our breath and then be propelled in the right direction. And then thirdly, we can listen to God. It's so precious to hear from God. His word brings comfort, conviction, encouragement, direction. We've just recently finished our term of Connect groups, and the Connect group we've just had, it's been so precious at the end, just have time of silence, waiting, hearing from God, sharing pictures with each other, applying his word to each other. It's so, so precious to hear that voice of God speaking comfort to each one of us this season. Maybe you want to open up the Bible in this month and just take a look through the story of one of the Gospels of Jesus' birth. Maybe you want to look at John chapter 1 and be amazed again at the word becoming flesh and moving into the neighbourhood, a light in the darkness that the darkness has not overcome. You maybe need to just hear God's word afresh, directly to your heart, and receive it and take it. And as we stop and we breathe in God's presence and we listen, the result is found in verse 5 of this passage where it says, "And the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people will see it together." That's our heart. If I could have anything for this church this season, it would be that we see the glory of the Lord together. That this isn't just one or two people, but as a whole church, we see the glory of the Lord in Jesus this Christmas. So why don't we stand?